Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. It's Simon here from Get Into Crypto, and today I really wanted to provide an update and share my plan for navigating what are very, very difficult and tough times within the crypto space. I mean, we're getting reports of more exchanges and institutions within the crypto space collapsing. There's been talks today of Genesis collapsing, that I believe is linked with Gemini. And all of this is coming off the back of the FTX news. And it feels like there could be more dominoes to fall as a result of the FTX contagion. So it's a very tough time. And I think really in times like this, what we need to do is try and stay calm, collected, focused, and we need to make sure that we have a plan to get through these difficult times, because we need to really try and stop ourselves from getting too emotional, because when we get too emotional, then we start to be led by those emotions and we start to potentially make decisions that we shouldn't be making if we're completely thinking rationally about the situation. And what I really wanted to do was just to take a look at the data, take a look at the chart, take a look at the history, and see if we could actually put together a plan going forward to capitalize on the panic we're seeing at the moment. There's a great Warren Buffett saying, buy when others are fearful, sell when others are greedy. We saw a lot of greed last year, and those of us that were smart enough to sell back then sold. I didn't sell as much as I wanted to, that's for sure. I was still thinking we could see another leg up. But as soon as I recognised that this market was starting to turn around much earlier on this year, then I did start to exit quite a lot of my positions. And to be honest with you, I'm now in a situation where I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, well, I think we could be ready to turn around here. I've certainly been accumulating over the last few weeks, over the last few months, since that summer low back in June, when we hit 17,500 on Bitcoin. I was saying it's a good time to accumulate. It's a good place to accumulate at under $20,000 Bitcoin. And obviously that hasn't aged so well right now, because obviously we've seen FTX collapse, but I don't think anybody in the space can turn around and say they saw FTX collapsing. I mean, maybe BitBoy, but you know, when's he ever right? I mean, yeah, as far as taking advice from people go, you pretty much write off anything that he says. I mean, between him and the Martini guy, then yeah, you're not going to do too well following characters like that. So look, I want to give you some real hard, cold, honest opinion on what I believe is happening in the crypto space. I've been a trader for over 15 years. I started trading the oil price chart as a professional prop trader in London back in 2011, 2012, and here we are. So let's try and get into this, and let's see what we can make of the current situation. So I'm just going to get on the screen share. Here we go. Right, so just before I start going into the Bitcoin price, if we actually just look at my thoughts on the Bitcoin market, we can kind of see, look, 9 months ago, this is, I don't know if we got, yeah, timestamp on here, right at the start of the year, 23rd of January. This is when I was calling for a move potentially down towards the 200-week moving average. So it was around about 20,000 at the time. And I kind of identified this box here being an area that I would like to personally accumulate, which would have been underneath this low from 2021. Another video here. So this is in February. This is actually sort of mapping out a bit of a path that I thought we might follow. So this has us coming down actually in June to around about the 20,000 level. Obviously, we went a little bit lower, but I would like to think that I called that move fairly well. And look, I mean, you can see the title here, the crypto bear market is here, my Bitcoin target. So, you know, I was calling a bear market back when we were, you know, just under 40K. We since popped up. We actually rallied up to around 48K before we eventually did come down. So there were opportunities for you to get out higher if you were in the market back then. But yeah, enough with looking at the past. Let's obviously look at where we are today, and let's try and get a plan for the next few months to ensure that we're going to maximize our opportunities in this market. Because, you know, when prices were all the way up here, I was actually starting to get very nervous, especially on this first run up. And I was even saying to myself, look, I'm nervous that Bitcoin's going up too high too quickly. And I was actually thinking to myself, look, I really like a bit of a pullback so I can sort of add a little bit more cash, so I can make a bit more from this bull run. And yeah, we definitely got it. And then obviously we got the second run up, and the second run up did catch me out, because I did think, right, we've actually taken out the high from earlier on in the year. And of course, it felt like we were going to go a lot higher. But then we saw a massive bull trap, and then a rejection, and then a run straight down in the Bitcoin price. And even here, when we were around sort of like the mid 40s, did look like we're starting to find a bit of support off this 50-week MA. And actually, we could look for one final run back up to make a final high, but we never got it in the end. As soon as this broke down, I actually remember I was flying back to the UK on the morning of this actual breakdown from 40K. As soon as we lost 40K, that for me was a massive warning sign, a massive red flag. And that's obviously when the videos and analysis started to come out to say, look, I'm looking to exit the market now. So yeah, let's jump in then. Let's find out what's going on right now, because we've got Bitcoin around about 16,500. It's looking a little bit lackluster, and we're struggling to get a bit of momentum to the upside. And obviously, with all the uncertainty, all the negative news coming out around crypto exchanges going collapsing, and also like funds that are linked to these crypto exchanges, it's obviously the whole contagion. Obviously, one falls, one domino falls, and then they all fall down. So it's feeling like a little bit of a house of cards right now, and it's definitely we're definitely in the sort of peak fear zone, I believe. So let's kind of look at where we are. Obviously, we've taken out this low, we've dumped down last week on big volume, I might add, and right now we're sort of under our support. So this support here around about 17.5, I'd call it closer to sort of 18.5 that we really need to get over to start to give us any chance of turning this around. We're under there, and obviously the risk is that we continue to roll over to the downside. Okay. Now, I just want to say the fact that this is all happening right at the end of this year, the end of what I would call the bear market year, as far as the cyclical analysis of Bitcoin would go, with Bitcoin being in a 4-year cycle, is really quite fitting. If we just have a look back at our last bear market, we can see that Bitcoin put in the high in the second week of December, 11th of December. And eventually we put in the low right on the 200-week moving average, which was 52 bars later. So our bear market lasted exactly 1 year. And if we just look at this bear market, obviously taking it from the top, we can see that if we take it from the high candle all the way down to the candle with the current low, we can see it's 52 weeks. So we have been falling for exactly 1 year. So timing wise, cycle wise, we are actually exactly where you'd expect us to be. And obviously all this news has been coming out. We've obviously had the tightening from the Fed being very hawkish, the rising of interest rates, and at the same time we've now had these collapses of FTX. Obviously before that we had Luna collapsing in the summer, and it's all kind of happening just right on time in terms of that 4-year cycle. So we should be if history is any indication of what we can expect going forward, and it's the old saying, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. So we should be able to say that we are around about the time when we would expect the low to come in for Bitcoin. And I'm personally thinking the low is going to come in very, very soon. I actually expect the cycle low to be made this month. So I am looking for a bottom. I would say at the moment that there is every risk that we get a further capitulation to the downside. However, part of me says if everybody's expecting things to go lower, even me, who, let's be honest, I am long-term a Bitcoin bull. So the bulls and the bears and everybody with any opinion on Bitcoin all seems to be unanimous in saying Bitcoin is going to break down further. Bitcoin is going to 14K. It's going to 13K. It's going to 11K, 9K, wherever. You don't hear one person saying that, hang on a minute, Bitcoin's bottomed and it's going to go up. So, yeah, I think there's a time to be with the herd. And certainly over the last sort of 6 months or so, when people did start to get bullish on the Bitcoin price, certainly when this low was taken out and people really started to get bearish on the Bitcoin price, that was definitely the side of the market to be on. But now I've got to say that actually the contrarian play is to actually say that Bitcoin has bottomed here. Now, I don't know if we've bottomed here. I don't know if we're going to go a bit lower. Nobody knows the answer to that, by the way. Nobody has a crystal ball. But I do really think that the worst of the downside is done. I mean, what's the move now if we actually look at the percentage of this move? I mean, we're talking about 77%. We're nearly 80% down, okay? And this aligns very, very closely to previous cycles. If we just look at the last cycle, if we just actually measure it from sort of the top to the bottom, it's around about 84%. And obviously, we've had diminished returns on the upside, so we could expect to see diminished returns on the downside as Bitcoin starts to mature as an asset class. And personally, look, I think if FTX had never happened, if this whole collapse had never happened, if Sam Bankman-Fried was actually making sure that he had all of his customers' crypto one for one in the exchange, and this never ever happened, and this mess wasn't here, I do actually think Bitcoin would currently be trading probably between 25 and 30K at the moment, and we would actually be on the up, because if we look at what's happened with the US dollar, we can see that the dollar has broken its uptrend. It's come down in a major way. That's a huge sell-off. And obviously, a lot of this is driven by inflation numbers falling quicker than economists have expected over the last sort of couple of data points. We had month-on-month inflation coming lower. We had the PPI coming lower than expected as well. And we've also had employment starting to creep up. So all of these indicators that Fed Chairman Powell has said that he's going to look at to then determine monetary policy going forward are actually now indicating that things are starting to get worse in the economy, i.e. unemployment's going up, but also that the thing or the reason why these hikes have been happening so aggressively is now no longer as strong as it was before, because inflation is starting to come down. And if we look at the history of the stock market, we will see that the market tends to bottom on peak inflation. It doesn't bottom when the Fed then pivots. It actually rallies between peak inflation and the pivot on the expectation that the Fed is about to pivot. So it's really important to make that distinction, that the market is not just waiting for that pivot, but it's going to be anticipating that pivot and front running that pivot. So if it looks like a Fed pivot is going to come in the next 2 to 3 months, then it may well be that we've actually seen the low for stocks, and we're going to see stocks start to sort of break some of this resistance and trend a bit higher. I mean, we can probably move this trend line over slightly. This is obviously on the NASDAQ, and we can see here we're rejecting a little bit. I believe this is a 20 period moving average that we've actually sort of rejected off a bit. But I do think stocks can get the momentum to go a bit higher here, especially if we start to see the Fed starting to make noises that they're going to be slowing down on these hikes. Obviously, that's not a full pivot, but it's like an indication that a pivot might be coming shortly, or a soft pivot, shall we say. So there's been quite a lot to talk about this. So just going back to crypto, I do think that now is the time to be focused, and now is the time to be looking at accumulating. I've been accumulating Bitcoin, like I say, since the low from the summer. So since the low in June, I've been accumulating. Haven't been going all in, haven't been aping into things. I've just been quietly reallocating capital into the market from what I took out over here, and obviously what I'm getting currently from an income. And I'm just going to continue to do so over the next few months. And I think if we go a little bit lower, then I'll start to deploy a bit faster, a bit harder. But I am going to be accumulating. I really think the next sort of 18 months is prime accumulation zone, which will obviously take us to the next halving. So I've actually put these dates on here. This is round about sort of when I expect us to start to break the downtrend and the sideways, and start to see a bit more of a bullish momentum come into these markets around about start of April next year. And I think that's obviously going to be 1 year away from the Bitcoin halving. So I can see us getting back between, say, 45 and 50K at the time of the next halving. I think the recovery will be fairly swift and fairly quick. Once we've got over all of this contagion, all of this panic, all of this fear, and we actually see stocks are turning around, dollar continuing to fall because the Fed are indicating that a pivot's on the horizon, and I think the market will turn around fairly quickly. I mean, given that the reason for the sell-off in risk assets that we've seen in Bitcoin and also in stocks has really been largely due to monetary policy as a response to inflation, then I think it's right to assume that when monetary policy gets back on our side and we start to see the Fed go more dovish, that we will see these markets make their way back up to all-time highs over the next year or two. And I do expect stocks to get there before Bitcoin does, largely due to cyclical reasons, and largely due to investors just having more confidence in stocks as an asset class. Okay. So, but that's not to say that money won't come back into Bitcoin soon and the rest of crypto. And I think the next thing I want to cover is just what am I accumulating? So obviously Bitcoin's right up there. Bitcoin's the main one. That's where over half of my capital that I'm adding into the markets will be going. I think we also have to look at Ethereum. Ethereum has obviously held up stronger than Bitcoin has. So we've seen relative strength. We've actually got a higher low currently on Ethereum compared to Bitcoin. So definitely in times like these, you want to be back in the winners. You want to be back in the stronger chains. And Ethereum's definitely one of those. Also like Link. Link is one that did very, very well in the last bear market. So if we actually go back, we'll see that Link was actually making all-time highs sort of fairly early on in 2019 or so mid-2019. And it just continued to trend up and up. And I do think Link, if Link has anything like the year next year that it had in 2019, which is obviously the year after the worst of the bear market, then I think Link could be one that actually leads some of this recovery. And I know there's big things going to be happening in the future on Link. I know they've got staking coming. So Link is definitely one that I'm going to be allocating to. So you've got BTC, Ethereum, Link. I think from the other ones I've got on this list, you've also got Litecoin. So remember that Litecoin has its halving next year. So its halving is going to be around about July of next year. So it's nearly a year before Bitcoin's. And if we just look at the last halving event that Litecoin had, it was back in June of 2019. and we saw a really nice run up. So if we look at the low just up to that sort of halving high, is about a 500% return. So can we see the same again for Litecoin? I'm tempted to say that I think we can. And if we just went from, I think we probably want to take the absolute low, which was obviously back in June. But if we were to do, say, 500%, then, you know, we're getting ourselves up above $200, probably back to the 50% retracement, which, you know, would be a very nice return on Litecoin. But it's definitely a coin and token that has a lot less regulatory risk, because remember, Litecoin is proof of work. It's largely decentralized. I mean, there's the Litecoin Foundation, but as far as I'm aware, it's just a copycat of Bitcoin, and they're not actually, aside from the working on a sort of coordinated development, they're not actually like responsible in terms of, it doesn't have a CEO, it doesn't have like a single point of control over the chain. So I do think Litecoin is one that could do quite well, and it's probably one that's been under the radar quite lightly, as, let's be honest, that I don't really get the long-term use case of Litecoin, but I think as a sort of 3 to 6 month trade, then that's one that I am interested in. We've also got to talk about Matic as well, because this has been really strong. I mean, look how high we are up from our lows previously. I mean, still 150% up off the low, more than a 2x. So Matic is really strong. ADA has been a lot weaker, but I just don't think the narrative is going away with ADA. We've got some others on here that, you know, I'm not going to cover today in too much detail, but I think they're the main ones you want to look at, to be honest with you. We'll just take a quick look at the CRO token, because it's on here. I am a CRO token holder. I do use the Crypto.com Visa card, and obviously it's taken an absolute hammering over the last week, with rumors around saying that Crypto.com are actually insolvent. So it remains to be seen what happens here. I think it's very, very risky to buy into CRO here. I personally am just waiting to see what happens, but I do still hold the token. So I mean, you know, I think if you were confident in what Chris, the Crypto.com CEO, has said about CRO, and if you believe in the company, you believe the company is going to survive this, then it's probably a very, very good time to pick some tokens up. But you know, that's not financial advice at all. None of what I say is financial advice, and I definitely wouldn't advise it right now. I'm going to wait and see myself. But you know, things could get very, very ugly if Crypto.com do not make it through this. But as of right now, I've had withdrawals myself that have been fully processed, given they took a few hours to go through. But I hear that this is fairly normal with Crypto.com. It can take a few hours. Withdrawals can be a bit slow. So at the moment, the signs I'm seeing from Crypto.com is that they're going to be okay. But you know, those could be famous last words. So definitely do your own research. Don't take my advice. But I'm kind of in wait and see mode. Some of my friends have sold all their Crypto.com tokens, got totally off the platform. I'm prepared to give them a little bit more time personally. And the other thing I wanted to look at very briefly was just BTC dominance. So we can see here that Bitcoin dominance is on the rise a bit again. So let's see what happens. I think given the weighting of stable coins now on this market cap BTC dominance chart, it's probably lost a little bit of its value between now and the last cycle. Just doesn't seem to be a huge amount we can really gain from this. I do actually prefer to look at like the ETHBTC chart for judging the strength of altcoins against Bitcoin. And if we actually look at Ethereum BTC, we can see Ethereum BTC is holding up very, very well, which does make me think that we are moving towards a multi-chain future with crypto. There were talks sort of the end of the last bear market that it's just going to be Bitcoin, and everything else is a load of rubbish. Don't touch it. But I think what we're seeing today is that some of these altcoins, Ethereum included, do actually have a future, and the market is definitely not discounting them as much as it was last time around that we went into a bear market. So yeah, I mean, if this is the bear market for altcoins, then we really could see some of these altcoins take off to much higher levels over the next bull run, and that's why I'm pretty optimistic. I'm pretty optimistic on things like, you know, your Ethereums, your Links, even Cardano, also DeFi chains like Phantom, things with like a use case going forward that I think will probably outperform Bitcoin in the next bull run. So yeah, but I just add the caveat just to stick to the large caps for now. We tend to see altcoins outperform when Bitcoin gets to, or certainly gets close to, its all-time highs. And at the moment, we're a long way off that. And if we just look at the sort of 20-week moving average, which is going to be this purple moving average, we can actually see that's what we got rejected off on this last move down. So we really want to see Bitcoin get above that until we start to get you know, too excited about altcoins. And Bitcoin could have a long way to go. Certainly if we break down here and we do move sideways, it could be, like I say, another sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 months until we actually get above the 200-week moving average. At that point, we'll also be getting quite close to the 50-week, and we might be able to see a nice breakout and some far more bullish and optimistic times ahead. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like the content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be back very soon with another update. Thanks.